Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Talking Tribal Show, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Survivor 48 season finale. I'm going to go through a finale prediction in a power ranking, and then I will go through who I think each juror will vote for and who I think will win Survivor 48. So without further ado, let's get into the video. For my prediction, in 5th place, I have Mitch Gira. I think right now there's two duos right now standing in the final four, Kyle and Camila and Joe and Eva. And I think, Mitch could use that as a swing vote opportunity. But I think, with the Shaheen move that Kyle and Camila pulled, I think Joe and Eva still trust them because they don't know that the whole situation was a lie. I think right now Mitch is at the bottom. I think he's a very likable guy, and they could see him as a potential jury threat. And I think Mitch is looking to be a pretty predictable 5th placer. And if he's not a 5th placer, then I'm assuming he's probably just like a 0-vote finalist. But I just don't see a world where Mitch is going to get to the top 3. So I think right here he's going to be 5th place. In 4th place, I've got Eva Ericson. Now, I think Eva's going to get 4th, but to backtrack, of course, I think Eva's going to make it to the top 4 because she has her idol, and I think Joe's going to win immunity, which takes, Joe and Eva out of the situation for a final 4 vote, and Kyle and Camila won't turn against each other, which leads to me to think Mitch will be 5th, and then I think Eva will be 4th. I'm imagining something like a Kyle or a Camila final immunity win, and I just have a feeling that's going to be a Joe and Eva fire-making showdown, and I don't see a world where Eva's going to beat Joe in a fire challenge. So I think Eva, her last stand is going to be at the final fire-making challenge, and I think that's where her journey will end on Survivor 48. I don't see a world where she'll get to the final 3. And if she gets to the final 3, it's another one of those situations where I think she's sort of a GOAT as well, like Mitch, where I don't see her garnering enough jury votes to win. I think the 3 other people left, Kyle, Camila, and Joe, are the only people that have a chance, in my opinion, to win walking into this finale. And Eva, to me, screams like a fire-making loser at this point. And I think her and Joe will have an ultimate showdown where Joe will, of course, he won't lay down his sword. He'll probably help her, teach her how to make fire, but ultimately probably take her down. And I'm sure it'll be this big, powerful, and emotional moment, kind of like maybe the one they had in the 5th episode in the middle of the season. So I think Eva will be 4th place. So that leads me to my final 3, which I'm predicting a Kyle, Camila, and Joe final 3. I think I don't see a world where Mitch sits in the final 3. Or Eva. I think maybe Joe could be the fallen angel, then Eva sits there, but I think Joe has too prominent of an edit. So before I reveal the placements of the finalists, I'm going to walk through who I think each jury member will vote for in the end. I'm going to start with jury member number 1, which is Cedric, and I think Cedric is going to be voting for Joe. I think Joe, the edit has been around Joe the whole time, showing Joe as a decision maker, showing Joe as the one we want to emotionally connect with. And I think Cedric can relate to Joe about caring for his kids as a father, and I think maybe that will be an emotional connection there, which leads me to believe that Cedric would vote for Joe. He's kind of probably the biggest wild card on the jury, but I could see him giving a vote for Joe because they both have being a father in common. So I think, if anything, Cedric would be a vote for Joe in that regard, I think so. Jury vote number 1 goes to Joe. Jury member number 2 is Chrissy, and I think Chrissy will sort of vote the same way Cedric does in Joe, kind of as a I told you so vote. Chrissy was voted out because she was speaking up about how Joe and the strong people were going to completely steamroll the game, and I think she's going to look at Kyle and Camila and be like, guys, I said vote out Joe, and you didn't listen, and here's a kind of an FU that Joe was the best player, and I'm going to vote for you against the 2 of you. I feel like Chrissy, though, is a super fan, and obviously, in my opinion, if we're going on strategy as of now, Kyle and Camila have clearly played the 2 best games, but I feel like Kyle and Camila could catch flack for not voting out Joe when they definitely had many opportunities to do so. And I think Chrissy will definitely be a vote for Joe because I think kind of with the Cedric thing, she'll have that parent thing with Joe, and I think she'd be a Joe vote for sure. So I think 2 votes for Joe now. Jury member number 3 is David, and I think if David were to vote for anyone, I think he'd be clearly a bitter juror, but I think his vote's for sure going to go to Kyle. I think, Joe's going to preach the honesty and integrity, and David's going to be like, no, you weren't honest with me when you voted me out. And I think he's very upset at Kyle, but I feel like David would vote for Kyle over Joe at this point in the game, because I feel like, Kyle and Camila will reveal their little secret alliance, and David will be like, I told you guys all along, and I was right about Kyle and Camila, and I'm going to vote for Kyle because they did a good job in hiding it, and Joe was not honest to me, and he lied to me on my vote out. I think David 100% will be a petty vote, and his vote will go to Kyle. Up next is Star, and honestly, I think Star is way more of a wild card than even Cedric and Chrissy are. It's so hard to think about what some of these jury members are going to vote, like Cedric and Chrissy and Star, because they had such small edits, and we really didn't get to hear much about them. I think clearly I know where David's going. I think I know where some of these future jury members are going. I don't know where Star's going, but if it was this particular scenario, maybe I could see Star kind of being... maybe she'd respect the game Joe played from Loggy, but I think I'll say Star votes for Camila. I think Star's going to be a Camila vote, because Camila and Star were at the bottom, and they tried to do the revolution thing where Kyle bailed out last second. And maybe Star will be like, hey, Camila, thank you for at least trying to get a move together, and you voted me out, but you duped Joe and with the Shaheen vote, and you guys duped Joe earlier on with the Thomas vote, and maybe she'll respect that. I could definitely see her voting for Camila because they shared kind of the bottom feeders alliance together, but I don't know. She's a big question mark, but for now, I'm going to put her vote as Camila. Next up is Mary, and I think Mary is another clear-cut Kyle vote. She said in one of her confessionals that she wasn't voting for Joe, and I firmly believe that her and David both aren't going to vote for Joe if Joe gets to the end. So I think Mary's for sure a Kyle vote in this situation. I know she kind of had talks with Camila, but I think maybe Kyle will be perceived as the one who's steering the ship, because Kyle's edit is kind of seeming like that. And it seems like maybe what does Kyle and Camila in is they split votes at the end, but I definitely think if David's voting for Kyle, I could see Mary doing the same thing. Next up is our most recent jury member as the time of this recording, and it's Shaheen, and I think he's going to vote for Joe. The last few episodes we've seen, Joe's the biggest threat, and I think Shaheen will respect his ally and that, hey, he got me, it was a misunderstanding, but you voted me out, Joe. I completely get it. You were playing the game, and I thought I could beat you, and I'm going to credit you with the win because you evaded getting voted out, even with all these challenges won and your social game. And I think Shaheen will be a Joe vote because of the relationship they had together. And I think Joe's social game will lead Shaheen to a Joe vote, because the only real connection we saw with Shaheen, we did see some Kyle stuff with him, but I firmly believe that Shaheen is a Joe vote to win the game, in my opinion. Next up, we have Mitch, and I think Mitch is a Camila vote. I think we've seen a lot of the relationship between Camila and Mitch, of them being at the bottom and trying to make the move. And if Camila does indeed get to the final three and they drop the bombshell of her and Kyle's secret alliance, I think Mitch would 1,000% respect that, and I think Mitch would give a vote to Camila. They've had a lot of good talks from what I've seen in some of the episodes, and I think Mitch would definitely respect the game that Camila played, kind of as someone who couldn't be a challenge beast, and she still won an immunity against Joe, and she got to the very end. So I think Mitch would be a Camila vote. It's really hard to say, but I think he'd vote for Camila in this situation. Lastly, the final member of the jury, Eva. She's a clear Joe vote. If Eva's on the jury and Joe's in the final three, there is no doubt where her vote is going. It will be on Joe. It's clearly the most, edited relationship of the season. Eva and Joe, a dynamic duo for the ages. Eva's a clear Joe vote here. So with all that being said, I think second place will be tied with 2 votes each between Kyle and Camila. I think their downfall will be that they will find themselves taking credit for each other's moves, and I think that they will probably split votes, 2 for Camila and 2 for Kyle, and I think that will be their downfall, that they went to the end together and kind of took credit for the same thing, and clearly I think the jury devised credit differently. So I think Kyle and Camila's downfall is they were just too good to go to the end together as allies, and they split votes in the end, which is clearly their worst nightmare. I think the winner of Survivor 48 is going to be Joe Hunter with 4 jury votes. A lot of people are probably going to be confused as to why I devised the jury votes the way that it is. Realistically, I feel like Kyle and Camila, the jury, will probably I just feel like Kyle and Camila played the best game. But sometimes you can't ignore the Survivor edit, and it has screamed a Joe win. It has wanted us to emotionally connect with him, with his bond with Eva, his incredible story about his sister Joanna. That's another thing. And then, of course, when Kyle and Camila were the ones who were like, should we get out Shaheen or should we get out Mitch? That was their big move, their big decision, yet the edit pointed back to Joe and made us think it's all up to Joe on who goes home. So ultimately, the edit is telling us, well, Joe is having the final say, and everything revolves around Joe at this point in the story. So I think Joe wins, and I feel like the only way he does win, because I do think it'll be a bitter jury, is if that Kyle and Camila sit in the end with him and they end up taking credit for each other's moves and split votes. I think Joe's an incredible winner. He's an old school Superman type of Tom Westman likable winner. And the last time we really saw one of those, I was probably Jeremy Collins. And I think we're due to have another one of these types of winners. I enjoyed watching Joe, and if he does win, in my opinion, I will be pretty satisfied. I know a lot of the fans would love to see a Kyle or Camila victory, but I think Joe's the right representative for Survivor 48, and I think this season's been pretty good. I know a lot of people have been down about it because it was predictable, but it has had an old school feel about relationships matter and people aren't always cutting each other, and sometimes you need a season like that, and I really have enjoyed this one, and I'm hoping to watch an incredible finale because I think this has been a pretty good season. Not one of the best seasons, but a pretty good one in my opinion, and I know that's very unpopular. So if you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to hit subscribe, because I will be recapping the finale afterwards on Wednesday. We'll probably post the video Thursday or Friday for Survivor 48. And of course, very soon, the Survivor 50 cast will be flying out. And if it gets leaked in the month of May or first week or second week of June, I will definitely be doing a Survivor 50 cast reaction, as that is very exciting. And I will do a Traders cast reaction too, because I'm sure that will also leak as well. So a lot coming up for the Tribal Talk. And this is Owen signing off. See you later.